This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Whether it's a New Year's resolution or a lifelong passion, start your journey to website glory with Squarespace. Check out their wonderful all-in-one platform through the link in the description below. More on them in a bit. Everything is bigger in Texas. One of the largest states in the US is also one of the most productive, churning out oil, petrochemicals, and other products that help power the global economy. Its port cities along the Gulf of Mexico ship goods all over the world. Texas City, located south of Houston, is one of the busiest, ranking 8th in the nation in tonnage. Some of the country's largest oil refineries are located there, making it a big hub for a gasoline-addicted economy. But it almost didn't turn out that way for Texas City. In 1947, a massive explosion ripped apart the port, killing over 500 people and nearly destroying the entire town. The economic toll of the disaster was staggering, over $1 billion in today's money. What made things worse was that the accident was entirely preventable and would lead to litigation that dragged through the court system for years, long after reconstruction efforts had begun in the city. By the end of World War II, the United States was the world's economic powerhouse. The massive industrialization that was key to the Allies winning the war was now geared toward rebuilding the civilian infrastructure that was destroyed in the process. Millions of tons of material was being shipped from ports in the US to locations all over the world. One of these port towns was Texas City. It had been founded in the 1890s by a group of businessmen who wanted to build a port there to provide an alternative to the port of Houston, located 37 miles to the northwest. It gradually grew over the course of the next few decades, mostly surviving the Great Depression thanks to the oil industry in town. But like many other places in America, the war accelerated this growth dramatically. In addition to the oil production, which was vital to the war effort, the government also financed the construction of a tin smelting plant and a chemical plant for the production of synthetic rubber. The latter plant, run by the Monsanto chemical company, was dramatically enlarged after the war ended and produced all kinds of petrochemicals. The population of the town had tripled in just a few short years, and trade dollars continued to pour in. It seemed to most people that Texas City was in the fast lane to prosperity. In April 1947, the SS Grandcamp arrived in the port of Texas City. Grandcamp was a Liberty ship, one of thousands of cargo ships built in American shipyards during the war to ferry material to the troops overseas. The ship had been given to a French company after the war ended and was now engaged in ferrying cargo to help rebuild that shattered country. One of the things French agriculture needed was ammonium nitrate. Ammonium nitrate is one of the world's best naturally occurring fertilizers, making it a high priority for the farmers. But the compound is highly volatile. In fact, the other major use for it is in explosives such as Astrolite, which is ammonium nitrate mixed with hydrazine rocket fuel, Amatol, ammonium nitrate mixed with TNT, and ANFO, ammonium nitrate mixed with fuel oil. If improperly handled, it can be incredibly dangerous. In 1921, a massive storage silo of the compound in Ammonium, Germany exploded, killing over 500 people. The Grandcamp had arrived in Texas City to take on a load of about 2,300 tons of ammonium nitrate, along with other cargoes such as small arms ammunition and twine. It had traveled to Texas City from the port of Houston because port officials there refused to allow the loading of the dangerous compound on their docks. The ammonium nitrate was manufactured in Nebraska and Iowa and was shipped to Texas by rail in paper sacks. It was hot in Texas that spring, and the boxcars and warehouses the ammonium nitrate was stored in caused the compound to heat up, increasing its chemical instability. As it was being loaded into the hold of the ship, longshoremen commented that the sacks were warm to the touch. Now, we're nearing the part of our story where things are going to explode in Texas City, but before we get there, a quick word from our fantastic sponsor, Squarespace. Look, it's a new year, so whatever that thing you're thinking about doing is, well, it's time to do it with Squarespace. Squarespace is the platform to use if you want to get started on that web project you've been thinking about. Are you looking to get in and out quick without thinking too much about what your website should look like? Bam! Use one of their quick, beautiful templates to make a website that is fresh and for you. Or maybe you're more of a hands-on person and you have a lot of opinions and ideas about what exactly you want the site to look like. Well then, Squarespace has tons of customization options, so you can really make it look exactly how you want. And there's no updates, there's no patches, there's no technical BS to worry about. And once you're done setting up your website, tinkering with the design if you're so inclined, or maybe just playing with the colors, there are so many extra features that Squarespace provides so that your website can thrive. Mailing lists, social integrations, analytics, commercial options, 24/7 customer support. It's everything you need in one place. And look, this isn't just another advertising partnership for me. When I launched the website for another channel that I do called Mega Projects last year, we did it in Squarespace, and we used their platform to create this elegant, super functional website. It really looks good. It was very easy to do. Squarespace made it happen. Right now, go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/geographics, and you'll save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. There is a link below, and let's get back to it. Early in the morning on April 16th, 1947, the Grandcamp was still moored in Texas City. It was scheduled to leave that day, and most of the crew was on board readying for departure. At around 8 a.m., smoke was seen coming out of the cargo hold. No one knows for sure how the fire started. The most likely explanation is a carelessly dropped cigarette during loading the day before. In that case, it would have smoldered all night until it flared up in the morning. The ship's crew tried to fight the fire using traditional methods, but they had little understanding of how ammonium nitrate reacted to fire. It was an oxidizer, meaning that it supplied its own oxygen to feed the fire. Using methods of suppression such as pumping steam into the cargo holds were thus not only ineffective, but it may have made the fire worse by converting the ammonium nitrate into the gas nitrous oxide. 30 firefighters were now on the scene doing what they could, but the fire continued to rage out of control. After an hour, the steam pressure had blown the ship's hatches open, and a strange yellow-orange colored smoke poured out. The sight attracted spectators along the shoreline, including schoolchildren. The fire was so hot, the water around the ship was boiling, and water from the firemen's hoses was turning into steam before it even reached the fire. What no one seemed to realize was that the cargo hold of the ship was now a giant pressure cooker. The heat from the fire continued to increase, and more gas built up inside the hold, causing the pressure to increase so much that the steel hull of the ship was seen to be bulging outwards. Eventually, the heat and pressure caused the 4.6 million pounds of ammonium nitrate to reach what is called the cook-off point, the point where the explosive compound spontaneously ignites. At 9:12 a.m., the cook-off point was reached, and hellfire rained down on Texas City. The SS Grandcamp blew apart in one of the largest non-nuclear explosions ever recorded. One of the ship's anchors, weighing over 2 tons, was thrown over 1.5 miles, landing with such force that it made a crater 10 feet deep. The shockwave ripped apart nearly every building around the port. The Monsanto chemical plant virtually disintegrated, and vats of chemicals inside began to burn and explode, causing even more damage. Large oil storage tanks on the waterfronts were hit as well, starting even more fires. Bales of burning twine fell out of the sky, setting most of Texas City ablaze. In the city of Galveston, 10 miles away, half the windows in the city shattered from the force of the blast. That city would eventually become covered in an oily fog that left a slick residue on every surface. Back in Texas City, the disaster was not yet over, though. The SS Highflyer, another cargo ship, was moored 600 feet away from the Grandcamp at the time of the explosion. She was carrying another 900 tons of ammonium nitrate and 1,800 tons of sulfur. The explosion set the Highflyer ablaze, leaving her in danger of exploding as well. No one was around to initially combat the fire, as 27 out of 28 members of the Texas City Volunteer Fire Department had been killed instantly in the Grandcamp explosion. Her mooring lines and anchor chains severed by the explosion, the burning Highflyer drifted into a third ship, SS Wilson B.Keene, also carrying ammonium nitrate. After 5 hours, both ships exploded, doing even more damage. Firefighters from all over Texas, and some from as far away as Los Angeles, came to Texas City to help put the fires out that were raging everywhere. It took a week. By then, Texas City looked like a war zone. Entire blocks of homes had either been flattened by the blasts or burned to ashes, over 500 in all, leaving 2,000 people homeless. More than 5,000 people were injured, over 1,700 of them needing to be hospitalized. All 4 Texas City fire engines were completely destroyed, along with 1,100 other vehicles and over 350 locomotive engines and freight cars. It took over a month to recover all of the bodies of those who perished in the disaster. 63 bodies were so badly burned that they were unable to be identified, and another 113 people were officially classified as missing, with no trace of their bodies ever being found. Those who were close to the explosion were completely incinerated, including the firefighters and the ship's crew. The death toll was eventually set at 581, the worst industrial accident in American history. The total cost of the damage was a staggering $100 million, over $1.1 billion in today's money. The seaport was completely destroyed, along with many businesses. It was feared that Texas City would never recover. But all over the country, people wanted to help. Several relief funds were set up, the most prominent of which was organized on the nearby island of Galveston by Sam Maceo, the city's organized crime boss. Maceo organized a high-profile benefit on the island, attracting a cast of stars headlined by Frank Sinatra. Eventually, the Texas City Relief Fund raised more than $1 million to help victims of the disaster. The disaster is notable in legal terms for being one of the first class action suits brought against the United States government. Initially, the government was found to have been negligent, not properly regulating the manufacture, packaging, and labeling of a dangerous compound like ammonium nitrate. This was overturned on appeal after a decade of legal wrangling. In the end, Congress stepped in and passed legislation providing relief funds, eventually paying out more than $17 million by 1957. Within days of the disaster, Monsanto and the other major companies whose facilities were destroyed announced their intention to rebuild in Texas City, saving the local economy from complete collapse. A decade after the explosions, few traces remained as the seaport was rebuilt and businesses returned in the same place as they had been before the disaster. Today, Texas City is one of the busiest ports in the United States. 3 major oil refineries are located in the city, including one of the country's largest, run by Murrah Petroleum. The city's 40,000 inhabitants primarily work in the shipping and petrochemical industries. Memorials to the tragedy are scattered around the city. The anchor that was found half a mile from the site of the detonation is part of a memorial park, along with a propeller from high flyer that was thrown a mile away when the ship exploded. A memorial fountain for the 30 firefighters from Texas City who died was also created. The Texas City disaster provided the impetus for modern municipal disaster planning. Today, large cities have disaster plans drawn up in advance so that when something like this does happen, the emergency authorities are ready for it. This has saved thousands of lives worldwide. The disaster also taught the world a lot about the properties of ammonium nitrate. We have a better idea of how to store it safely, how it reacts in a fire, and how powerful an explosive agent it is. Still, ammonium nitrate accidents continue to happen. A fire at a fertilizer factory in the city of West Texas caused an explosion that killed 15 people and injured over 200 in 2013. And in a disaster comparable to the Texas City event, a massive explosion occurred in the Lebanese city of Beirut on August 4, 2020. This was caused by a fire at a warehouse that cooked off 2,700 tons of ammonium nitrate that had been improperly stored. So far, over 200 people were known to have died and thousands have been injured. It is believed that as many as 300,000 people were left homeless. The long-term effects of the disaster in Beirut are still unknown, but will likely impact that city and the nation for years to come. Unfortunately, the destructive power of ammonium nitrate has also been used by terrorists to commit atrocities. Most of the force of the bomb that destroyed the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City in 1995 and killed 168 people was wrought by 4,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate. Anders Breivik detonated a bomb constructed of ammonium nitrate near the Prime Minister's office in Oslo in Norway in 2011, which killed 8 people and provided a distraction for police so that Breivik could carry out his gun attack on a youth summer camp some 25 miles away from the city. Ammonium nitrate bombs were also detonated in the Indian cities of Delhi and Hyderabad within a span of 2 years, killing over 30 people between them. Some countries and municipalities have either enacted or called for stricter regulation in the sale of ammonium nitrate as a result of these terrorist attacks, but the ubiquitous nature of the material in fertilizer and the fact that farmers purchase large quantities of it for legal uses makes regulation difficult. Texas City has not been immune from disaster in the years since the 1947 tragedy either. In 2005, an accident at an oil refinery owned by British Petroleum, BP, caused an explosion that killed 15 refinery workers and injured over 150 more and caused severe damage to one of the country's largest oil refineries. That disaster was caused by a corporate culture that prioritized profit over safety. Several critical safety devices were in disrepair or were completely outdated, and BP refused to pay to have them replaced. It was an alarming prelude to the Deepwater Horizon disaster that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico 5 years later when an oil rig owned by BP exploded, killing 11 people and causing the largest oil spill in history, creating a huge environmental disaster for the entire Gulf Coast region. BP was forced to sell their refinery in Texas City to Marathon in 2013, part of the company's effort to raise money to pay compensation claims and fines as a result of the Deepwater Horizon disaster. 3 years later, the city was hit by Hurricane Ike, and while spared the devastation caused to other nearby cities like Galveston, it still suffered extensive damage. But as with the Grandcamp disaster, the people of Texas City have rebuilt, contributing to the place's nickname, the city that wouldn't die. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Don't forget to subscribe. Also, please do check out our fantastic sponsor, Squarespace. Link to them below. And thank you for watching.